Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Debatable. Today, we look at how politicians wash their hands during this pandemic.
Welcome back. I'm Nina.
I'm Kyle.
We all know we have to wash our hands this season, so we decided to take a look at politicians who have become experts at this through the years.
So, a couple of disclaimers. The first one is that this is our sincere attempt to air our opinions about actions of public figures. We do not carry any malice with us. This is just how we view the news. We are not, for the record, encouraging people to break the law. We'd rather just start conversations about our relationship as a society with the people in power.
As always, our thoughts and opinions should not be taken as fact, and we encourage others to do their own research as well.
And a lot of this issue is still developing, so expect changes to occur between the time of this recording and the time that you're listening, be it a few hours, days, weeks, or even months from the publication of this episode.
While some of these things we will be discussing can apply universally, we will be focusing on the Philippines and the case studies that we can see here. Tip 1. Political distancing and isolation. If you notice, people who are usually noisy are fairly quiet now.
And yes, they could just be doing their jobs, but frankly, we are just still surprised that they haven't even been vocal or even seen going about doing their jobs.
Yeah, and if you notice, this is the time where you'd expect a lot of the noisy politicians to shine in this moment. So I'll just name one person who comes to mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure I've seen anything that Senator Bato has been doing. There's actually been now a trend on social media where people would post hashtag where's Bato. Because in every other situation, he seems to be on top of things. But during this pandemic and during the time where Duterte is giving a lot of power to the military man in government doesn't seem to be active at all.
Yeah, and since we're talking about washing hands during this pandemic, you don't want to catch the criticism virus by being visible in public, which is why it's a very good idea if you're a politician to do some political distancing and isolation, because the criticism that you will get for not showing up is still going to be marginally lower compared to the criticism that you will get if you mess up in public. Tip 2. Pretend that your hands are clean.
In this method, one other way to clean your hand is to pretend it was never dirtied in the first place. So this is where you can use up all your diversion tactics. Call out all the politicians who you deem as dirtier than you. If they used to be their partner, it doesn't matter anymore during this pandemic. Everyone is an enemy, and everyone is therefore dirtier than you and should be called out, or else you will sink with them. We have a few case studies to analyze here, because it's been kind of a field day in the DDS cinematic universe. So we see one big example would be Amy Marcos and Sandro Marcos seemingly calling out Duterte in their tweets and in their video posts. So Amy questioned the emergency powers that were granted to Duterte, made an entire video about all the conspiracies and controversies that were attached to the current administration, demanding that the funds be released and people be given food, which seems to be a redemption arc. But if you analyze deeper, if you know the history of Amy, you know that she's probably not really an advocate of this, and she also has her own dirt. But at this point, it doesn't matter. All eyes are on Duterte, and therefore she's capitalizing on that. Sandra as well has called out the quote-unquote stupidity of the Duterte administration for summoning Vico Soto. He replied to one tweet by saying, "It was so stupid, bro," which to me is a very vague tweet, but may be an indication that alliances are shifting.
Yes, and you also see this in the case of Tito Soto when he called out the NBI yesterday, or at least at the time of recording that was yesterday, when the NBI issued a summons or an invitation to Vico Soto to explain his alleged non-cooperation with the directives of the national government. Tito Soto went on record on Twitter and said that what are they doing? For example, they said, especially considering that the Bayanihan Act was a law that was principally authored by Tito Soto himself. So I thought it was very interesting. And he was saying that, what are you doing? You don't know what you're talking about. Penal laws never have retroactive application.
Yeah.
And while I agree with that, I generally disagree with Tito Soto in general. So I'm just very surprised that he'd be willing to call this out. But that's considering that Vico Soto is, if I'm not mistaken, Tito's nephew.
Yeah, he's the nephew. So it's probably like more family alliance, more important than political alliances. But again, this could be just an isolated instance. And Tito Soto usually was quiet when Vico Soto was called out before. He's only speaking out now. And that might be because he knows the power is on Vico's camp. And he's just riding that wave. Again, though, we're not really sure of what their intentions are. Another interesting case to look at in terms of people trying to wash their hands would be this weird narrative of the DDS versus Coco Pimentel. And we all know what Coco Pimentel did. He had a basic field trip around the area. He went to SNR, Makati Med, to a bunch of birthday parties and meetings. And what happened because of this was Mocha Uson and Sas Sasot called out Coco Pimentel and told him that he had to resign. They were very vocal on social media, called him a Dilawan, etc., and said that he was very incompetent. So it's funny because they thought he was Dilawan, but when in reality, he's the leader of PDP Laban, and he is like a very, very strong crony of Duterte. But again, this was only short-lived, right? It was very short-lived, and after that, I think Mocha Uson and the rest of DDS just tried to ignore Coco Pimentel and then shift the narrative back to Vico Soto. But this was an interesting case to look at because people were really quick to jump on Coco Pimentel and throw him under the bus.
Yeah, since we're talking about cleaning our hands again, we tend to criticize those who didn't wash their hands. And obviously, this means that we ourselves have clean hands, even though a lot of the time we don't actually have clean hands.
Yeah, so the trick is, when you get called out, just turn your hand and show them the clean parts. You don't have dirt if they don't see it.
And it's interesting to see power shifting and people struggling to figure out what side is most strategic to be a part of. And for me, at least, when I see people trying to call out one another, I always get cynical about why they're actually doing this. Are they saying this because they actually believe in it? Or is it because they notice that a lot more people are starting to believe these things also? So they have to ride the wave in order to hold on to their influence.
Yeah, so this is where the term balimbing becomes really relevant. So balimbing is a slang word for a political turncoat, someone who is disloyal to his party, company, or group. It describes government or party officials who switch affiliations when it is expedient and when it is convenient. So it refers to someone with many faces.
Yeah, did you know that balimbing is also, like in English, known as the star fruit? Because when a balimbing, it's a fruit pala. When a balimbing is sliced into cross sections, it looks like a star. Yes, did you know that? Just saying. So kung balimbing ka, ibig sabihin kasi pa-star ka.
Ganun ba?
Yeah, yan ibig sabihin nun.
I thought it was just because like you can change the angle of the fruit and it'll look different. But I guess, many interpretations to this fruit. Tip 3 is to cover up your dirt.
This tip brings to mind the quote-unquote redemption of Manny Pacquiao when we take a look at philanthropy versus actually doing your job as a senator. Because it seems like just because Manny Pacquiao was able to donate so much stuff, and I commend him for donating a lot of that stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that he as a person or as a senator is redeemed.
So in this tip, what usually happens is your ability to donate is equated to your competence as a politician. So more money, more competence. And this is not just about donating. This is also about plastering your name on everything in hopes that people have name recall, giving out eggs and like a piece of fish, and then spending a lot of money to print your family name on it. So this is where people can be seen making the most of a bad situation. And they do this not because they care. Maybe part of them cares. But they know that this is just campaigning. They are using the situation to benefit themselves in the future. They donate not out of the goodness of their heart, but out of the goodness of their campaign strategy.
Yeah, so when you want to cover up the dirt that you actually have, what this essentially means is that you're giving people something else to focus on. Like if you're doing just an objectively bad job somewhere else, donate something, donate a lot of things so that people tend to forget the terrible things that you did and just focus on the good things. That's how you cover stuff up. Or maybe let's have a law punishing fake news while being the only ones who can determine which things are true and which things are false, so that every time that you are called dirty, you can say, no, you're the one that's dirty. I'm completely clean. You're the one that's dirty. You're the one who's publishing fake news. And I know this because I'm the one who can determine what fake news means to begin with. Tip 4. Genuinely cleaning up your dirt.
So if you really want to wash your hands, we suggest, and this is just us, maybe do not get inspiration from politicians. Because if you notice, step 1, 2, and 3 are not exactly acts of genuine cleanup. They are acts of distraction. They are acts of diversion. They are acts of building on their dirt and trying to turn it into something else.
Yeah, cleaning up dirt is a very long process, and you might still find some missed spots. But the trick is to just keep trying. Don't give up.
This also means helping others recognize that they have dirt that they may still carry, and it also means leading them towards the light and helping them clean up their act.
And this means that you're going to have to accept your faults, replicate best practices. You have to be thorough, you have to be complete. You need to know why you're washing up. It's not just for your benefit, it's for everyone's benefit. Because that's how we truly heal as one.
So, the summary of everything we talked about, in all seriousness.
The first one is that power is very fickle, and Duterte's power can be seen as waning as the days pass and the pandemic worsens.
We also see during this time that people are quick to jump ships, and they should not automatically be forgiven. We should welcome them. We should use their power and their resources when we can, but we should not let them steer the wheel, as I've told others in the past. It's too early to tell what their intentions really are, and we shouldn't praise them blindly, because fanaticism is what got us here in the first place.
And also importantly, we should not forget how people acted during this particular time. We must hold them accountable. We must demand better. You must also demand from people who have proven themselves capable of actually helping.
Alright, so recap. Here are a few tips to washing your hands like a politician.
Number 1. Practice political distancing and isolation. While the public stays at home, stay at home as well. And let your constituents wonder where you are and if you will even help them. After all, people can't say that your work is bad if you don't do any work at all.
Tip number 2 is to pretend your hands are clean. Make your hands look cleaner by pointing your fingers at the dirt of others. When you get a chance, mob the other people and slip away unnoticed. If you are lucky, in a few years, people will forget all about your dirt and think of you as clean, even if deep down, your hands are still covered in blood.
Number 3. Cover your hands so that people don't see the dirt. Use the medical gloves you've been hoarding with your riches and give people some money so they look away. Plaster your name all over donations so they don't have time to see anything else.
And finally, tip number 4 is to just acknowledge your dirt and maybe do something about it. After all, there is still something to be done. Apologize and put effort into undoing the damage that your dirt may have caused.
And that's how you wash your hands like a politician.